Welcome to Mana's Seal YouTube channel. The previous video link is on the description box or on the top right card. Volume 12. The Paladin of the Holy Kingdom. The undead were beings who did not feel fatigue. That was why trying to flee an undead being of comparable speed was very difficult, according to her lessons. Well, that was common knowledge. Neia's experiences with the Sorcerer King had completely shattered her perception of the undead. At times, she even found herself thinking that he was just a human magic caster in a skeletal mask. Thank you very much. Then, may I trouble you to come with me? But of course. And there is no need to thank me. Since we are here to defeat Jaldabaoth, we ought to be helping each other out. While she knew that we in this case referred to the Holy Kingdom and the Sorcerer King, it could also be interpreted as talking about Neia and the Sorcerer King. That made Neia feel a little excited. Eventually, someone knocked on the carriage door from the outside. Your Majesty, we have prepared a room for you. Neia opened the door. When the paladin outside saw the bow Neia was holding, his eyes went white in surprise. This was the first time she had brought the bow she had received from the Sorcerer King outside the carriage. That was because the Sorcerer King had not left his carriage ever since he had lent her the bow. In the end, nobody else had seen it until now. You must be surprised, huh? I understand how you feel. This isn't a weapon you'd let a squire carry. While the paladin bathed her in his gaze, Neia turned to face the carriage and bowed. Though she was simply looking at the ground, after sensing that the Sorcerer King had dismounted, Neia raised her head and asked the paladin. Sorry, but we need to speak with Captain Custodio, so can you lead us to her? His Majesty says he will be going as well. Yes. Understood. Then, please follow me. The paladin, followed by the Sorcerer King and then Neia, entered the cave. The bluish-white illumination from the mushrooms that was creepy. In places where the mushrooms were particularly prolific, monstrous shadows danced on the walls and the spaces between the mushrooms. In addition, their bluish-white light made her look like a corpse, but mysteriously enough, she did not mind it now. As they walked through the cave, they occasionally saw commoners and priests, as well paladins standing watch. They should have heard all about him from the captain and the others who had gone ahead of them, but they still could not help gawking at the Sorcerer King. It's kind of rude, though. The Sorcerer King would not get angry, right? He was a very kind ruler. However, the kinder people were, the more frightening they tended to be when they did get angry. Should she tell them they were being very rude, in order to avoid such an event? However, she could not go and tell each and every one of them in person, and it was not a problem that could be resolved by words alone anyway. After all, to the citizens of the Holy Kingdom, to all of the living, the undead were fundamentally the enemy. I'll tell the captain about this later. Well, it's good that they haven't drawn their weapons. Suddenly, Neia sensed that the Sorcerer King had produced a piece of paper, and that he was looking at the letters written on it. Although Neia was interested in what was written there, she could not see the letters, owing to the way it was concealed within his hand. Finally, they were brought to a room that was partitioned off by a hanging curtain, and the sounds of a noisy exchange of opinions came from inside. Captain Custodio. The Sorcerer King and Squire Baraja have arrived. The interior fell silent. The paper in the Sorcerer King's hand had vanished to places unknown. Let them in. After hearing the captain's voice, the paladin pulled away the curtain. The paladins and the priests who rose to welcome the Sorcerer King, the ones who had not been part of the delegation, had a complex blend of emotions in their eyes. Even Neia could sense this. Naturally, the Sorcerer King must have felt it too. However, there was no way to tell how he had reacted to it just by looking at his back. There's no way His Majesty can't feel the mood in the air. Perhaps he simply doesn't care about the petty fumblings of tiny men. Is this the bearing of a king? Everyone, listen up. Before us stands His Majesty, the Sorcerer King Ainz. Unable to ignore the plight of our nation, he has specially come here on his own to aid us. You will accord him all due respect. After Remedios said so, everyone in the room bowed to the Sorcerer King. Once everyone had raised their heads, the Sorcerer King spoke in a grand tone. Greetings. I am the Sorcerer King, Ainz. I have come to this land in order to help you, not on the behalf of my nation, but in a personal capacity. Therefore, while this might be a little sudden, I have noticed a few things on my way here, so I wish to seek your opinions on the matter. Please allow my follower to explain. The Sorcerer King stepped aside, allowing Neia to walk past and in front of him. Excuse me, everyone. Allow me to explain what His Majesty said earlier. Neia relayed the Sorcerer King's questions to everyone present. After the short speech, a heavy silence filled the room. Then what does His Majesty propose we do? Remedios addressed her question to Neia, who stood by his side. No, before that, what do you think? I have only come to do battle with Jaldabaoth, not to lead you all. If I end up participating too heavily in your strategic planning sessions, do you not think things will become very troublesome after defeating Jaldabaoth? Murmurs spread through the room. Or do you mean to say you will subordinate yourself to my command? In that case, I will also use the most appropriate means to save this nation. That ought to be the best way to do it, right? His Majesty might be undead, but everything he says makes perfect sense. He will surely abide by any agreements he makes too. Right now, at this very moment, if you want to save the suffering people, bending the knee to another country's king for a time ought to be the right choice to make. No. The only one who may stand above us is Her Majesty, the Holy Queen. Regretfully, we cannot accept commands from the king of another nation. However, Remedios promptly rejected the offer. You should be willing to do anything to save the people. Wasn't that the reason why we're using the king of another nation, and such an incredible king at that? Neia hung her head. That was to hide the dark, muddy emotions which stuck to the interior of her chest. May we inquire as to what course of action your Majesty would take in our position? If it were me, well, the logical thing would be to immediately move your base to a new location. No. A new location. Everyone in the room, Remedios included, had a distressed look upon their face. That was because they did not know of any other place which was suitable as a hideout. Judging by your response, I guess you do not know. In that case, you need to plan your future operations under the assumption that the quicker you move, the sooner Jaldabaoth's army will attack you. Then, since that is all, I will retire to my room. Just as Neia was about to follow him, the Sorcerer King held out his hand to stop her. Forgive me, but I would like you to stay here and listen to the other's opinion on my behalf, Miss Baraja. Understood, Your Majesty. While he had not acknowledged her as one of his people, it would seem the Sorcerer King was treating her as a substitute for himself. In that case, if she did not properly complete this task, he would be disappointed. Just imagining the Sorcerer King being disappointed made her heart flutter for some reason. I can count on you, then. You don't mind, do you, Captain Custodio? If your Majesty permits it, we will not object. After hearing that, the Sorcerer King turned to leave with the paladin assigned to be his guide. Once he vanished around a corner, a priest spoke up. So that's the Sorcerer King, Captain Custodio. Will it really be all right? I hope the cure is not worse than the disease. That would be very troublesome. Indeed. Taking future poison to escape present agony, is that not what paupers do? We've talked about this before, haven't we? Don't make me repeat myself. The poison's already in us now. Not His Majesty, huh? They aren't going to address him with respect. Neia was irritated by the dramatic change in attitude they had shown the moment the Sorcerer King was gone. If one understood the attitude of the citizens of the Holy Kingdom towards the undead, then their attitude was only to be expected. Rather, it was Neia's displeasure which was abnormal. Why does she feel unhappy about this? Well, he's still useful now, so it can't be helped, and we've concretely seen how he can help us, but as priests, we might have trouble neutralizing that poison, no? What do you mean, useful? Someone notices a mistake we made and even goes on to supply a solution, but not only are they ungrateful, they're still thinking about how to use him. So that's it. That's what I sense from His Majesty, something which the Holy Kingdom now lacks, a sense of integrity. That's why I feel like this. How much of His grace had she received? After sharing a carriage with him, she had been given the chance to realize the fact that despite being one of the undead, the Sorcerer King was a king that was worthy of respect. Therefore, what she felt for these people would be more accurately termed pity. Speaking of which, Squire Baraja, what's that bow you're carrying? Yes. His Majesty said that he would lend me this weapon for the duration of my assignment. May I take a look at it, Squire Baraja? I wish to see if the bow is enchanted with any sinister magic. The priest extended his hand to her. Normally, she would have handed it to him. However, please permit me to refuse. The priest was stunned. It was a face that said he had not expected to be denied. This is a weapon I have received from His Majesty in order to protect his person. I will not allow it to leave my hands. She would not allow someone who was only thinking of using an ally to touch it for even a single moment. Neia lowered her head as she replied to keep the anger in her heart from showing in her eyes. Captain Custodio, what's the meaning of this? Squire Baraja, hand that bow. In other words, you don't mind if I report this to His Majesty, then? The air in the room froze over. Enough. I understand. Let's continue talking. So at least they still know that things will go poorly for them if His Majesty finds out. Before that, Captain Custodio, would it not be better to let Squire Baraja return to the Sorcerer King Dono's side? Neia noticed one of the priests glancing at the bow for just a moment. Neia understood the meaning he was trying to convey, but despite the anger boiling in her heart, she did not let it spill over to her words or actions. I apologize, but I am here to listen to everyone's words by order of His Majesty. I would be very grateful if you would let me continue to remain here and listen to your words from the side. True enough. Gustavo, what do you think we should do? His Majesty said so in front of all of us. If we have her leave now, it will probably cause more problems in the future. That's true. So we'll let her remain, then. Is this something you should be saying in front of the person in question? As Neia thought this, she bowed in silent gratitude. Now then, following on what the Sorcerer King has said, what should we do? Does anyone have any ideas about leaving this place and looking for a new refuge? Perhaps someone with her father Pavel's ranger skills might be able to find a place for this many people to stay for extended periods. However, there was nobody like that here. The Sorcerer King, His Majesty said earlier that if we do not do anything, Jeldabaoth will not make a move either. In that case, why not search for a new place before they take action? That suggestion, made by one of the paladins, met with scattered approval. However, Neia knew very well that putting the matter off would not solve anything. In the end, all it would do was cause a pillar of problems in the future. The problem isn't just finding a new place, but also the matter of provisions. Well, this is winter, so food is easy to preserve. Finding enough to tide us through the entire season is not easy. Even if we have not secured the kingdom's cooperation, shouldn't we at least buy some food from them? Wouldn't that help things? Unfortunately, prices are unbelievably high on the kingdom's side. Also, even if we did manage to buy the food, we'd need a massive amount to sustain this many people for several months, so transporting it would be very difficult. Vice Captain Dono, I understand what you're trying to say. However, there would even be anything to discuss without that food. In the end, we need some way to get rations from the south, no? Or perhaps shift our base closer to the coastline, so we can ship it in from the kingdom. Unfortunately, we lack the funds for that, and we didn't get a good response from the kingdom's traders. As for getting it from the south, Gustavo smiled bitterly as he replied. They probably haven't realized that danger is drawing near for them. Our navy is being slowly worn down. It's like they're taking a step closer to the chopping block with each day that passes. So we need something to make the south want to help us, isn't it? The base, the food, our problems are piling up. As for resurrecting the Holy Queen Sama, can it be done? After all, once we can get that settled, everything else will be moot. Unfortunately, according to what we learned from Blue Rose, even that 5th tier spell will have a hard time working without a corpse, or if it's badly damaged. Can we count on His Majesty's power? You want to borrow the power of the undead. Things being what they are, what else can we do? If the Holy Queen Sama were to be resurrected, then only the main problem would remain. Everyone's eyes turned to the sour-faced Remedios.